The world has witnessed the existence of many ruthless leaders and dictators. More renowned are some of Europe's most cruel dictators, and like the popular saying goes, birds of the same feather flock together. So it's not surprising seeing that some of these dictators aligned forces and worked together to enforce their dictatorial rule and make territorial gains given their shared beliefs and ideologies. In this video on your favorite history channel, we take a deep dive into the life and time of one of Europe's greatest dictators, Benito Mussolini, and just why he decided to work with the Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler. The love-hate relationship between both men who were formidable forces while they ruled as leaders of two of the greatest countries in Europe is one you definitely want to get a thorough insight on, and you absolutely want to watch this video till the very end, so keep up. Hey there, and welcome yet again to your #1 history channel, where we bring you the most fascinating documentaries about the greatest personalities, events, landmarks and establishments in human history. Please make sure to support us by giving this video a like, hitting the subscribe button and smashing that notification bell to receive notifications of when we post more mind-blowing videos like this one. Do leave us a comment as well, as we'd love to read your opinions about this unprecedented alignment between two of history's best-known dictators. Nazi Germany's known political and military ally in Europe was Italy. The Italians had been governed by a fascist regime under Benito Mussolini since 1925, and Italian fascism was very much the elder brother of Nazism, a fact Hitler himself acknowledged. Yet for all the ideological similarities, the relationship between Hitler and Mussolini was bumpy and complex, and not as smooth as people tend to erroneously presume. The alignment of their two countries was consequently not as firm as would be expected, but it did help both men in achieving some shared interest. The union between Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy was more or less a marriage of convenience and expedience, rather than a firm alliance of sister states. Hitler was a great admirer of Mussolini, and this was evident in the actions he took in his early years as the leader of the Nazi Party, which greatly mirrored some of Mussolini's own accomplishments. Hitler was particularly fascinated with Mussolini's March on Rome, which was essentially a 1922 protest where thousands of fascists and fascist supporters strode into the Italian capital to enforce Mussolini's appointment as Prime Minister. Hitler would later write to his Italian counterpart and ally about the great admiration he bore for that moment, and also attempted to replicate the feat in what is now known as the Munich Putsch. Mussolini's support for Hitler, especially during World War II, wasn't just a decision he hastily reached. Rather, it's something that has been in the works since nearly 2 decades prior. It's well-known history that Mussolini has been providing some financial support to the rising Nazi party since the 1920s, and he also helped train the party's paramilitary by allowing the Nazi assault division, popularly called Sturmabteilung or SA, and the Schutzstaffel or SS men to train with his own paramilitary brigade, the BLACKSHIRTS. Hitler's ascension to power in 1933 was also very well publicly praised by Mussolini, who hailed and considered it as a victory for his own fascist ideology. The first meeting between the two dictators was held in Venice in June 1934, and didn't exactly go as planned. Mussolini spoke some German and refused to use a translator. He also had great difficulty understanding Hitler's rough Austrian accent, who also subjected the Italian fascist ruler to one of his rather lengthy monologues that greatly bored him. It was after this encounter that Mussolini, who was rather prone to egomania, developed a rather scornful opinion of Hitler and the Nazi Party, considering Hitler's ideas and theories to be very coarse and simplistic. Both men were likewise strikingly different in terms of their racial views, and while Hitler was largely racist and anti-Semitist, Mussolini was largely nationalistic, and his views on race did not extend to hateful anti-Semitism. Regardless, both men managed a degree of cooperation and remained allies while continuing to pursue their respective dictatorial agendas. Mussolini had a grand vision and idea to build a new Italian empire, one that replicated the glories of ancient Rome, and Germany offered him support during and after the crisis that subsequently erupted from this. Mussolini's first target was Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, one of the few African kingdoms not yet under European control. So in October 1935, Italian troops invaded and occupied much of Abyssinia, and despite strong criticism from the League of Nations against Mussolini's action, Hitler, who had prior pulled Germany out of the League in 1933, strongly backed and supported Mussolini's action. Germany was the second country to recognize Italy's legitimacy there. German-Italian relations got very strong at this point, and would soon get boosted again by their joint involvement in the Spanish Civil War of 1936. Both Hitler and Mussolini sided with Francisco Franco in the Civil War, with Mussolini providing 50,000 troops. In furtherance of their partnership as allies, Mussolini paid a state visit to Germany in September 1937, where he was met by a long parade of troops, artillery, and military equipment, a show of strength that was specially orchestrated to impress the Italian leader. Italy would also leave the League of Nations in solidarity with Germany in 1937, and in March of 1938, Hitler invaded Austria with Mussolini's support. Soon, Hitler would begin to have a lasting influence over Mussolini, especially on his view about race. This influence would become manifest in Mussolini's Manifesto of Race, which he published in July 1938. This decree, which proved very unpopular in Italy, was largely anti-Semite and stripped Italian Jews of their citizenship, whilst also removing them from government occupations. The Nazi-Fascist alliance was extended further in May 1939 with the signing of the Pact of Friendship, an alliance between Germany and Italy, a pact informally called the Pact of Steel. This pact was a 10-year agreement that committed Rome and Berlin to supplying military and economic aid if either nation found itself at war. The pact also contained secret discussions and protocols where Germany and Italy agreed to prepare for a future European war, as well as guarantee a promised and rapid increase in German-Italian trade and military cooperation. The pact further saw both nations secretly agreeing to avoid waging war without the other until 1943. But Hitler ignored this commitment and ordered German troops to invade Poland as early as September 1939. Mussolini, on his part, maintained a neutral stance, claiming that Italian industry and military production was not yet ready, thereby rendering the newly established pact almost ineffective only a few months after it was signed. Hitler's invasion of Poland immediately caused Britain and France to declare war against Germany. Germany would go on to invade Denmark and Norway, and this singular act of courage and unprecedented resolve would convince Mussolini that Hitler would win the war. Soon, Holland and Belgium would also fall to Hitler. And as the Germans ploughed through France in June 1940, Mussolini announced Italy's entrance into the war. He immediately declared war on France and Great Britain on June 10, 1940, two countries which had declared war on its closest ally. Mussolini's other war aim was to seize control of British and French colonies in northern Africa, but the campaign would prove disastrous, and by late 1941, most of Italy's troops in Africa had been defeated. On February 5, 1941, Adolf Hitler would scold his Axis partner, Benito Mussolini, after his troops retreated in the face of British advances in Libya, demanding that Mussolini command his forces to resist and fight harder. Italy had occupied Libya since 1912, and there were thousands of Italians living in the North African country, especially after Mussolini sent tens of thousands of Italian farmers and other rural workers to Libya in 1935. By 1943, after years of fighting in World War II, Italy was viewed by its own citizens as losing the war. So on July 25, 1943, Mussolini was voted out of power by his Grand Council after the Allied forces had closed in on Italy. He was subsequently arrested and sent to the island of La Maddalena. When Italy accepted the terms of secret peace talks with the Allies, Hitler ordered German forces into Italy, with this resulting in the creation of two Italian nations, the other half being occupied by Germans. Mussolini, fearful of being handed over, was instead rescued by Hitler's forces, who secretly transported him to the German-occupied northern Italy, where he was installed as Hitler's puppet leader and creating the infamous Italian Social Republic, an action that saw a repeat extermination of thousands of Italian Jews. Allied forces would, however, soon barrel through Italy in June 1945 and successfully capture Mussolini while he attempted to flee to Spain with his lover. One day later, Hitler committed suicide, and the following week, Germany surrendered. Hitler and Mussolini found comfort in each other as they became increasingly ostracized from the international community. Thus, in essence, the alliance was based on the considerations of political gains rather than a durable and fraternal association. Mussolini essentially chose to align fascist Italy with Nazi Germany in what was an alignment that formed a core part of its geopolitical ideology. Mussolini, in hopes to make some gains from the spoils of war, aligned with Germany in World War II, only when France was about to fall and war seemed virtually over.